Well, welcome everybody to the next episode of Breaking Ground, which is a podcast put on by Geovert and yours truly, Hannah Thomas, a project engineer for Geovert. We use this podcast to kind of spread awareness for women working in construction, mining, really any male-dominated field. So just hearing their experience, their stories, that's what we're here to do today. So today we have Marisol. I don't even really know how to do your last name justice, so I just will say your first name, and you can go ahead and say that if you want. But Mary is a principal rock mechanic engineer currently at WSP and lives in Canada. So welcome to the show, Mary.
Thank you so much, Anne. Very happy to be here.
Okay, so let's dive in, kind of just going back to your origin story, where you started off. As a kid, were you interested in geology and dirt back then, or what kind of like guided your path towards doing geological engineering in college?
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because I grew up in Costa Rica. I lived there my whole life up until university, and then I moved to Vancouver to go to UBC. And yeah, I never had really considered geological engineering, to be honest. It wasn't something that was on my radar.
Yeah, nobody really knows it exists, to be honest. I didn't.
Totally, yeah. And especially in Costa Rica, I think it's still not something, a career path that you can follow. I think most people do civil engineering. So it wasn't even a branch that I was exposed to. But then, yeah, going to UBC, the first year was all general applied science. And as part of our first year, we had one course where different professors from the different engineering disciplines came to talk about their discipline and sort of what courses you'd be taking if you went down that path, and what different career opportunities you'd be exposed to if you end up graduating from that particular discipline. And so we heard from all the different professors, and geological engineering just really piqued my interest. It seemed like a really good balance between office and field work. You'd get to still be outside. And one thing that I found really interesting is you'd be designing with natural materials, which is something that's very different from all the other disciplines. And that part really interested me, just how do you design with materials that are variable and that have a lot of uncertainty? So yeah, I was interested in that part of it right away. So yeah, in the first year.
Did you spend much time like outside growing up? Is that, I guess, what kind of filled that passion to want to work outside?
Yeah, I really liked being outdoors. Growing up in Costa Rica, there's a lot to do outdoors. There's a lot of national parks, and
yeah, I've heard such good things about it. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, so that was a big part of it too. Just the prospect of working 100% in the office all the time was a little bit daunting, but having that opportunity to be outside and still do work in the field was, yeah, really appealing.
Yeah, no. Did you do any internships or any sort of like work during college where you had kind of an opportunity to see what it would be like to work as a geological engineer, outside of school?
Yeah, I did. So I was very lucky. I did the co-op program, it's called at UBC. It's like a series of internships that you do before you graduate. And the very first job I ever had was working for Canada Exploration as a field assistant. So it was a summer job. And it was, looking back, really, really cool. Actually, I got to go around in a helicopter, and our project was to collect, yeah, it was really cool, to collect soil samples. And they were doing exploration for diamonds. So, the samples would get sent to the lab for identifying indicator minerals and things like that. So that was, a full 4 months that I was just spending time outdoors, and really loved that job. And then beyond that, I was able to work at a couple of different mining companies before I graduated. I worked for 4 months at Diavik, which is a diamond mine in the north of Canada. And then I did 8 months at a mine in Australia, just in northern Australia, as a uranium mine. So that was,
so yeah, you had field experience, like international field experience before you even graduated.
Yeah, that's right. And I loved it, just everything about geological engineering, and particularly I had never really been thinking about going into mining, but I enjoyed those two co-op terms. Definitely were what led me down that path.
Gotcha. So before you did those co-ops, did you realize that mining kind of was an option for geological engineering to go into, or was that kind of where you realized that that whole world was available to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So I realized that there were a lot of different branches you could go into with geological engineering, because basically take courses from, well, as you know, there's applied science courses. So you do some mining, you do some civil, you do a lot of earth sciences. So initially I thought of going down more the environmental engineering path. But I found that, I had one job that was in environmental consulting. And I just found it wasn't exactly what I was looking for, because I found myself doing a lot of remediation work.
And no one ever
like,
knows when they get into that what it really entails until you're logging some pretty nasty stuff, I feel like. Right.
Totally, yeah. So I just thought, I don't want the rest of my career to be solving problems that have already happened and kind of trying to fix, the environment that's been contaminated. At least that's what I thought in my mind it would be. So, then tried going into mining, and I had those job opportunities. And even though I hadn't initially considered spending the rest of my career in mining, I found that to be just a really interesting discipline with everything that goes on in an operation. And it's so multidisciplinary, and specifically geotechnical engineering in mining. A lot of what you do is related to safety, and sort of contributing to that aspect of the operation was something that I found really rewarding, being able to design with safety in mind and consider things like rockfall mitigation. And
so is that what got you into rock mechanics then? Was kind of like that intro into the mining world, and just seeing how much like slope stability and rock mechanics kind of ties into safety? Like they're all, I think, kind of intertwined.
Yeah, for sure. I found that to be the most interesting part of everything that I had done up until that point.
Okay, what part of it though? Like the modeling, the like mapping part of it, the just, I don't know, logging even? What part intrigued you into going that direction of, I guess, more that technical design part?
Yeah. Initially, I guess in the earlier parts of my career, I did a lot of characterization work. So a lot of it was collecting data and then analyzing it and figuring out how to characterize materials that are very variable, and
like kinematic analyses too, or
so that part comes after, so you collect all the data.
Your data.
Then you have to analyze everything, come up with design parameters, and then carry out analyses, and like everything from start to finish, all the way from the moment you collect the data all the way through the design. Is just about managing variability and uncertainty, and having
assumptions too.
A lot of assumptions and things like that, which I always found that part of it really fascinating. And
some people hate that part of it, I think, just because there's so much unknown, because if you're in electrical engineering, it's like you turn on a switch, it's going to turn on or not, and then if it's working or not. I think with us, we usually find out if a design fails, and that's not something you want to find out that way. But I'm with you. I think it makes it more exciting to have to kind of take every environment with a new, perspective and variables and assumptions and unknowns, and having to, just keep track of that, and also communicate that, and also still come up with a solidified design that you can trust.
Exactly.
I think that is the thrilling part. So do you find yourself, I guess, even at the beginning of your career, did you like being, doing more field work or office work, or just that balance was, I guess, what worked for you?
Yeah, I think things have definitely changed for me over the years. In the beginning, I was really keen to be in the field often, and I really enjoyed, every experience that I had. But it was a lot, honestly, to be in the field sometimes for weeks at a time, depending on
and
what
mining,
program.
especially, you get put on rotation, and then you're out kind of just living there, and that's your whole world and your life. Like I've not had to do that. I can't say I even know what that's like, but I've done a 2-week logging rotation, and I was like, wow, this is my life now. Like I have to be away from home this long. So I think, it's great to do at the beginning of your career, because, you don't have, maybe a whole family that you're worrying about, or your dogs or whatever. And then it lets you go to different continents, different countries, and get you all that different experience. Because I think even just seeing the different cultures and the different environments they exist in gives you a great perspective heading into working really the rest of your life,
For sure. that part is so important. And especially if you're working with natural materials, you want to see as many of them as you can, right? And early
Right.
on,
Yeah, because
yeah,
then it's like you're
yeah,
able, even though it's never going to be the exact same, you can at least predict it a little bit better the next time because you've seen things behave similarly. Because it might not be the exact same rock mass, but if it's the same lithology, maybe it does behave similarly. So I do have
exactly.
like
Yeah.
a question specifically. When you came into the industry, was there like a moment that you realized that it wasn't really built around having women in mind, especially, surrounding PPE and safety? I think that's where I've seen it the most, but.
Yeah, honestly, it's every time I have to buy PPE.
Yeah, okay. I
I
think we
remember
all
this.
feel very
Oh,
similarly on
yeah.
that, where it's like, oh, an extra large is not going to work on me. Like that, even though I'm wearing PPE, it actually is more unsafe to wear something that is too big, right?
I have this memory of being at a site early in my career, and we had to wear coveralls, and
Hmm.
the ones that were available were way, way too big for me. And I just remember having to roll up the pants and like
And they're like, oh, it's still
nothing
safe.
fit.
It's fine. If you trip, no, it's okay. That's just
Yeah.
like, it's all good as long as you at least have them on. I really feel that, and even having a harness that was put on me, that was an extra large. I'm like,
Mm.
a harness is supposed to be like safe
Yeah. Yeah.
and like hold you. So to have that, I was like, that was even an internship. So I didn't even realize kind of what I was getting myself into with, working in construction and what we do now, where you go to a new site and it's like if they've never had a woman on site before, then they're not going to have the correct PPE. Have you had that happen where you show up and they don't even have like something that's safe to wear? Is
Yeah.
that kind of what you're saying?
Honestly, not as much anymore. I have seen
Mm,
definitely in the amount of time that I've been in the industry things advancing, and it's very
good.
rare now that I go to
Hmm.
a like an actual site that's well established that doesn't
Hmm.
have appropriate PPE. But
Hmm.
early in my career, yes, I had those situations where there just weren't gloves that would fit me, and I had to make sure I had all my own gear before even showing up, and yeah, and even finding
How's
my
that
own gear
fair,
was difficult.
Yeah, because then other people can show up and have all that ready to go, and then
Yeah,
it just already makes you feel like you're standing out more than others, and it doesn't make you feel the most welcome, I feel like. But
yeah,
I've had some companies that really do champion making sure that they have women, specific PPE. That's not just the cinched, vests that show off all the
or
curves.
the
Like,
pink safety boots.
yeah, exactly. Like not everything pink because we don't want to stand out more than we already do. We just want to
Yeah,
show up, do our job, and do it safely. Um,
yeah.
so
But there is, I think, I can't remember the name of the company. There's a Canadian-based company now that I think they only do PPE for women, which is awesome.
okay. Is
I
it Safety Girl? Is that the one? Because like
can't
I've
remember
heard
the
of a
name of it right
couple of
now.
them, but like I think that might be the Canadian one because I'm like, I can never buy it if it doesn't like they don't send it to the
Right.
US.
Yeah.
But it is,
Oh,
I've seen a really big uptick lately on
yeah.
women specific PPE and then women specific like field clothes. Because when I was shopping for like Carhartt pants in person, they never had a size 0 or size 2, I like
Right.
ever. So I'd
Yeah.
only ever get that online and just gave up shopping in person because I'm like, they're not selling to me,
Right.
and that it's like kind of disheartening and
Yeah.
disappointing to be discluded.
Yeah.
And that way when we work too, we work outside, we log,
Totally.
so it is really cool to see what's happening with that. But I bet, even for me back when I started 6 years ago, I feel like times have changed a little bit in that
Yeah.
regard. um so you I don't know if you created or you just helped create or you run, but you helped create like the Women in Mind Stability Group, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Can you tell me kind of like the origin story and what like drew you to that? Because obviously being in rock mechanics and slope stability and mining, it makes sense. But yeah, if you want to just go deeper into that.
Yeah, for sure. So it's really interesting how that group came about. It actually, if I had to pinpoint the moment, it was at a conference about 3 years ago now, the Slow Stability Conference, which happened in Tucson actually that year.
Mhm.
And it just was very noticeable that there was a lack of representation of women in the technical program, in the attendance. There were no female keynote speakers, minimal percentage of female session chairs, and so it was quite noticeable. But it wasn't the first time. This is something myself and many others had been noticing for many
It's a
years.
pattern. Yeah.
It was a pattern. But for some reason at that conference, we just happened to have a lot of women that were very passionate about the subject, the few of us that were there. And we had so many discussions around it. Why is it that this continues to happen? What can we do proactively so that the next conference doesn't look like this? And is there something that we could push forward to just make this problem a little bit less prominent going forward? And so that group, we were maybe like 10 or 12 women that were talking about this, and we kept the discussion going, and we made a point of actually meeting up and following up, and I reached out to other women that I knew in the industry that I thought would be interested in forming part of, a very informal group that we
would... international though, right? Kind of all over the world.
Yeah, and so that was the beginning of it. It was some very informal discussions that very quickly became more formal meetings, and we gathered a larger group of people, and we just saw so much enthusiasm and so much support from the industry that was super rewarding for me. I didn't really know what to expect, like making a group like that and reaching out to the conference organizers. And we had a plan, for the following conference, which would be, that was the 2023 Slope Stability and Mining Conference, which was in Perth in Australia. And we reached out to the conference organizers, and they were super receptive. I remember speaking with the lead of their organization, and she said, this is fantastic. And actually, we want this to not just be something that happens at this conference. We want to encourage you to form a formal group, and maybe we can have like the launching networking event at this conference, and then it can be like a longer initiative. And that was really, the beginning of something that turned into a real global committee that's grown a lot. And in that conference in Perth, we saw just completely a drastic change. It was I would say the greatest representation of women I had seen up until that point at any conference. There were so many papers presented by women. There were, I think, about 50% of the track chairs were women.
Wow, that's huge. Like, even I think in engineering as a whole, it's rare to even see women presenting like abstracts as is. So to have multiple.
It was incredible. Like beyond anything that any of us, I think, would have expected. And it was just so rewarding.
Like the best reaction result you could get, I feel like, in a situation like that, where it's like, hey, we all kind of wanted this and now it's here, so let's do it. So do you meet like monthly, or what does the group look like?
So we meet monthly. After that event in Perth, we decided to become an incorporated association, which is basically a nonprofit. And we registered for that last year. So our group is, pretty new, but we're officially a nonprofit now. And we meet monthly. We have different subcommittees established that look after different aspects. We are, formally requesting sponsorship. So that's allowed us to grow the group and formalize it quite a bit more. And we've had so far a lot of success, I would say, and really so much enthusiasm from the industry has been very rewarding to see.
That's amazing. And I'm also glad to, starting to be a part of it too, just because I am technical and in an industry where there really aren't very many women at all. And I knew that coming into it, but the second you find an amazing group that you're like, wait a second, where has this been? And that's probably how everyone felt, of like, where has this been? Because we all feel, similarly, and to be able to learn from each other technically, and also just from life experience and just having to deal, with our industry and the ratio that we have. Is there like certain themes or issues that come up within the group that the women experience, or is it?
Yeah, I think, a theme that comes up a lot, and a lot of our vision and objectives is built around that, is the theme of visibility. Like just how important it is to have visible representation of, and specifically technical disciplines, right? In mining, because a lot of us that are in technical disciplines, I don't know how it was for you at the start of your career, but in mine, I didn't have that many examples of women who operated at a senior level that were within my circle of, visibility. And I always wondered, is this an industry that's for me? Like if I don't see that
If you
many
don't
examples.
see, yeah, if you don't see what you
Exactly.
could be, do you even think that's a possibility?
Exactly. Yeah. And so it can create a lot of doubts for people, going into
Mhm.
an industry where they don't see themselves reflected in the leadership teams or
Mhm.
in the senior people. And I would love for that to change. And I think that it is changing.
Mhm.
So our group talks a lot about that, like we're always keeping an eye on visible representation. If there
Yeah.
is an industry event, are the speakers adequately representing the female population, the female
Mhm.
demographic? Same with conferences, right? So it's something that's always on our radar, and it comes up a lot.
That's huge though. I think like even going to like conferences now when I do, if I see a badass woman up there like presenting and knowing your stuff, I'm like, hey, I want to be like her. And that just makes me think that maybe I can. Like Julia Potter is an example of that for me,
Oh,
where
totally.
she's kick ass, like,
Yeah,
does she just knows her technical modeling stuff, but also presents it in like a super, super clear, concise way. And a lot of engineers we don't have that strength. Like we're great
yeah,
behind the computer, and then you put us in front of people, and we freak out a little bit. But I think having, seeing that, it just makes me feel like I can go and do that too, and even, succeed in the industry, even present and kill it.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
without having that visibility, it's like it just kind of keeps you quiet and
yeah,
a little shy about things because you don't have any inspiration to kind of go off of. And
yeah,
I think even what we're trying to do now with this podcast is, talk about the issues that we face, but also talk about how you even got where you are, because I think letting people know that you can be successful and where you are now, and that it took a little bit of time to get there, but I didn't know anybody that was a geological engineer or whatever. My dad's a lawyer, my mom was a nanny. So I think to not have that visibility, I didn't even know geological engineering was an option until
right.
I went to mines and they're like, yeah, this is an option and you can map on beaches if you want. It's not what I do now, but
Yeah, yeah,
that was kind of that visibility of like, oh, like we really need to showcase one, our industry, but two, women in our industry,
yeah.
kicking ass and not having to put other people down in the process, but really
Yeah.
building other women up. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And it's exactly that, is building other women up. The more that you have women being visible, successful in their technical disciplines, the more that encourages more women to step up and pursue that
And to
path
see there's a community
and
too
see that
that
there's a community.
Mhm.
Yeah, that there's a path, there's a community, and that you're not alone. I think not seeing yourself reflected in the people around you can be lonely and can be, pretty daunting. So yeah, that part of it is so important. And that's the other theme that comes up a lot in our group is the importance of community, having those connections. And
Support
because
system even within your
yeah,
career. Yeah.
the support system for sure. And also just the connection and the knowledge that there are actually a lot of women in the discipline. I think a lot of us are maybe a little bit scattered across different regions,
And
across different
siloed, yeah.
companies. Yeah. And so it's very easy, even before we created this group 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I would ask, well, how come there aren't more women presenting at this conference? And the response would be, oh, well, there aren't that many, like where are the women? Show me your list. And my list would be pretty small, to be honest, because my circle
Yeah.
wasn't, that broad. But then starting this group and learning that there are a lot of women in
Mm-hmm.
senior positions actually
Mm-hmm.
practicing in the industry, doing incredibly well in the industry and contributing a ton. We're not all in one place, but when you factor in the full industry, there's a
You have a
huge,
lot,
a
yeah.
huge community. Yeah,
Across the world, especially where it's like,
yeah,
actually, no, I do want to hear from someone in like, I don't even know. I feel like there was like Papua New Guinea or something where it's like, oh
uh,
yeah, I do want to hear from them. Like, yes, they are doing similar work. It might be very different in our cultures, but we all have so much to learn from each other. And even to hear, maybe someone struggling with something that you can relate to, even just hearing them talk about it makes you feel
yeah.
that much less alone and empowered. And I think that's kind of everything. So I love that it's international. I love that you can get a little bit of a mixing pot with everybody.
Yeah.
Because that's where I really think that like we benefit as a community. We have so much to learn
Yeah.
from each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just having that network already established, that a conference organizer can come to our group and say, hey, we're looking for a female keynote speaker. Can you help us? And we've already got this
You got a
database of
list.
contacts. I no longer have to wonder like, oh, is there a woman out there that has the experience that we didn't know? We already know for a fact. So that helps as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Do you think there's like certain strengths that women kind of bring to our industry and like stability, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think, diversity is so important in any group. And I think gender diversity is one aspect of it. I think having teams that encompass different genders, different backgrounds,
Yeah.
different regions, different cultures, that
Mhm.
creates teams that are really, really strong. So
Yeah.
I think just by bringing that diversity, women already contribute a ton to teams
Huh.
and
The new
inspiring to,
perspective, right? And I
yeah, the
think that's
different
like
perspectives.
that's what makes diversity so great is that you have everybody sitting at the table, you have everybody providing their perspective, and no one
Yeah,
is wrong. I think the right perspective is a mix of the collective perspectives. And if you
absolutely.
can see a team that way, and it's apart from gender, whatever, like I think that's kind of the way to do it because we need allies. We need men that also agree that women are great and deserve a spot at the table, especially in our industry. I think in the
Yeah,
construction world too, like there's even less women. So
right.
for me, being an engineer and a technical person, it's really nice to have a group like this where I don't feel so alone. And I have, no problem fitting in with men because I have mostly brothers, but
Great.
I think it is just so different being even in women in mining when I've gone to those kind of conferences where it's like there is only 4 men out of like however many women. And you're like, what? This
Yeah.
exists in our industry? So
Yeah,
I
that's
feel like
amazing.
groups like that are like the safe haven of, hey, just so you know, there are people like you out there going through the same things that you
Yeah.
are. And just find them. Like go take the time to find them because you feel so much less alone. I think it can be so isolating to think
Oh,
that
yeah.
you're like the only one struggling with the same issues that we all do. So do you feel like the industry has like treated women differently in the last like I guess 15, 20 years versus how it is now?
Throughout my career, I have noticed a change, a very
Mm,
positive change.
mhm.
Um, I would always like the change to be faster.
Yeah,
But
of course, yeah.
I think I'm a little bit impatient in that sense. But
Yeah, I'm with you.
there is change happening. There are still a lot of issues. I always think if we think about diversity and inclusion and belonging as a journey, I think the mining industry is still, in my opinion, close to the beginning of that journey, but it's really taking off. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of positive signs that I see, positive changes, a lot more focus on inclusion,
Yeah.
definitely a lot more diversity. And I think just looking around, comparing my experience as a new grad coming into the industry to the new grads that I work with now,
Mhm.
I hope and I believe that they have a lot more examples of female senior leaders
Visibility,
to
yeah.
exactly the visibility, and they don't have that same lack of representation that was so daunting when I first started. I think that's improving for sure.
Yeah, like I feel like it's that question of am I gonna make it if I've not
Yeah,
seen anyone else make it before?
yeah,
So now, yeah,
um,
they have you to see that you have, made it and created this great group and, have all of your technical experience. And I think that that's really what we have to focus on is like handing that down to the people after us and being like, hey, I might not have had everything you have now. That's not going to make me bitter or think you deserve less. All I'm going to do is make everything after me better, even if it doesn't something that I don't benefit from,
exactly.
because that's all
Yeah,
you would hope for yourself. I feel like even my mentors, everything they've done for me, it's like, oh, I didn't ask them to do anything. They had experienced it themselves. And so they didn't want someone to feel that same way. So they
yeah,
went out of their way to make sure that they were taken care of.
yeah.
And I think that's kind of like what our job is now is just to look out for those people and group like that is a great way to get all your technical senior experience, people together and then start to bring in that next generation, because I think that's where that visibility is so important to see, hey,
Yeah.
you can make it. Don't leave,
Yeah.
like we need people to stay, especially mining, I think is
Oh,
an
yeah.
industry that people don't really understand. So they kind of avoid it.
Yeah. It
But
for sure. I think bringing people into the industry and showing them that they do have a bright future ahead of them, and
there's a
getting people
place for them.
and that there's a place for them. Exactly. That's huge. And retention is so important. And the more that we have women succeed, the more that the next generations will feel like they can also and should aspire to be the future leaders of the industry.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh,
I see it. I see a bright future. And
Mhm.
I definitely acknowledge that we just can't take the foot off the gas. We need to be
No, you
vigilant.
can't get complacent,
Yeah.
and because then it's like that gap is going to show up eventually. So this
Yeah.
kind of is a good segue into our next question. What do you want the next generation of women in engineering to know, coming after us?
I think it goes back to the 2 points that we were talking about before around visibility being so important. So you often think you want to be visible for career progression, for sure. You need to first and foremost
Recognition, right? Yeah.
recognition. You need to do great work. Like nothing will take that away. That's absolutely the basis. It needs to be
Yeah.
great work, and you need to be technically excellent. Once you have that, you also need to be visible and get the recognition to be
Yeah.
able to advance in your career. That's something that I learned, I think, a little bit late in my career progression, that visibility is so important. And it's not only important for you to be successful in your career, but as we were talking about, it's so important for the other people around you to see you succeed, right? For the people who are looking up to you, we need to be visible for them too. So that's one thing. And then the other aspect was around community, how important it is to build that community, those connections, not only for support, but also because when you have a goal that you're trying to achieve, achieving it on your own is possible, but it takes time and it can be daunting, and there can be a lot of challenges. But when you have a community that's fighting for the same goal with you,
And it's a win-win. It's
it's
so
a
much more
win-win.
satisfying.
Totally. That's when you can really make, really quick and transformative changes together in a community. So those would be, the two things that I've learned that have been really, really valuable, and that I wish I knew a little bit sooner. Then I would definitely encourage
Right.
everyone
I
to.
know I feel like we all feel like that, where it's like, yeah, I wish I would have known that. And I wish I could have told myself that, 10 years ago. And like all we can do now is to have grace and gentleness, that we didn't know any better, and warn everybody else so that they don't have to go through the same trouble.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I really appreciated your comment about visibility for yourself too, though. I think separate from just being visible in the industry, making yourself visible is how you do show up and
Yeah.
show people that you can succeed. But I don't think a lot of people know that. Like they think doing that is being a squeaky wheel, or just what I mean. Like it's
I know
not a
exactly
bad
what you
thing.
mean.
It's
And
like
it's not
more.
always comfortable. I think it's hard for a lot of people. Definitely for myself, it's something that doesn't come naturally to me.
It's the
But I think,
audacity is the same word I've been using, of like the audacity to say what you deserve and who you are and what you're capable of. We don't want to do that, even though we're so capable.
yeah. Yeah. But I think when there is, something that you've achieved that is great, finding a way to let others know, within being yourself still, without sacrificing who you are and
Yeah.
being visible. But yeah, finding a way to share that, because I think everybody benefits when we do share our achievements, and it's,
And be ready
like
to
I
share
said,
the spotlight too if it's with someone else, because I think the worst thing
exactly.
is taking credit for things that you didn't do, but also taking credit for the things that you did do, because
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
deserve that. And it's really having that audacity to take what's yours and to just shine. And I think we need to continually remember that it's okay to shine. It doesn't mean that you're taking away from other people. It actually can illuminate other people, I think, that way. So I love that. I think that's great advice. So we're a little short on time now, but let me move to this closing questions. They're rapid fire. So you can say as long of an answer as you want. Just whatever you want. Okay, ready? If you could tell your 10-year-old self anything, what would you tell them?
I think so many things, but one of them would be something else that I wish I knew sooner. And I think I would say this to any like 10-year-old girl that's growing up, and is that your voice matters, and that when you see something that isn't quite right or something that
Speak up.
Yeah, speak up, because people
I
do
hear
wanna,
that. I'm like,
yeah,
I'm like,
right?
my 10-year-old self needed to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's so important because people need to hear your opinion, and they want to hear your opinion. And when you speak up, it encourages other people to also speak
To
up.
do it too. Yeah, to
Yeah.
have the courage to do that. I'm
Yeah.
with you. Thank you for that. I'm going to take that with me too and remind my 10-year-old self to do that, because I think that with like advocating for yourself and your boundaries is everything. You don't want people to step on that. Everyone's going to be unhappy in the end then.
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet. Okay, so last question. If you were to have a walk-on song, like one that plays when you enter the room, what would you choose?
Okay, so I'm gonna go with J-Lo's "Let's Get Loud."
Hey, let's get loud. Yeah, so good. Why do you choose that song?
Oh, I just love, well, first of all, it's a really happy song.
Mhm.
But secondly, I think, it goes to the message of like just being visible and loud, and just, not
And take
not
up
hiding.
space, right?
Take up the space
Yes.
that you deserve, and
Mhm.
encourage others to do that as well.
Oh my God, I love that. I'm gonna go listen to that when I'm done with this and then jam out, because I love that. I think it, like you were even just saying before, it's everything to just live out loud, be who you are. It gives other people the courage to do it too, and also makes them feel more safe with you too. So I think that is everything. And to get a reminder from someone like you that's very bubbly, and your energy is contagious. I think we all need that reminder to just be and to not apologize for it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, thank you for taking the time today to be on Breaking Ground. We really appreciate it. And I'm super excited to have the world hear your story and all of your great life advice. So thank you again for
Thanks so
joining.
much, Hannah. Yeah, this was lovely. Thanks for having me.